So good morning, everyone. This session, this 2-day session that we're in right now, Psychic Development Level 4 of the Anastasi system, is geared towards teaching you how to channel, what channeling is. We're going to be talking about channeling all day today, and an introduction to mediumship, i.e. spirit communication. And we'll be doing that introduction tomorrow, and we'll be doing mediumship and spirit communication all day tomorrow. Now, why in this order? Why are we doing channeling and then spirit communication the following day? Because these things build. And I have a co-helper here with me today. I want to introduce him. Would you come on up, please? Grab the mic on the way up. John Mayers was nice enough to come in, and a lot of you who took level 2 will remember that he actually conducted a mediumship session after one of the evening classes, or one of the classes that evening. He did mediumship after level 2 and did a phenomenal job. The following month we had half the class back to see the next medium. He did such a wonderful job with it. John is the person that helped me for many, many years in the development of the entire system, but most specifically the channeling, and even more so the mediumship parts of the series, which is levels 4, and then following this levels 5 and level 6. John, you have anything you want to comment on?
Just from where I am, my mom always used to tell me I was from Hungary, so I tell people I'm Slavic.
And currently he's from Florida's East Coast. And obviously he's got, he and his guides have this very odd sense of humor, which comes across.
So. I think they wouldn't appreciate me otherwise, I don't think.
This is true. At any rate, when you read my books, and I've dedicated a couple of them, to John, and he's written me information, and there are a lot of his exercises all through them. When you read in my books that it says exercise by Sandy, exercise by John, this is the John we're talking about. He has a different approach to things than I do. So I'm grateful to have him here for the session today and tomorrow, and hopefully he'll be with us in levels 5 and 6 as well. And periodically when I'm stumbling over something, we can expect him to kind of jump in from the back of the room, which is where he will be mostly, and just fill out the blanks so that maybe your understanding of whatever we're talking about will be more complete.
In the vernacular of Abraham, I'll be offering contrast.
Contrast, true. Yeah, thanks. So those of you who hear this disembodied voice from the back of the room will know where it's coming from, okay? And if there are any really strange jokes along the way, you will know that they're not my guides, okay? So, onward. What is going on here? We've spent levels 1, 2, and 3 learning to develop what I think of as your basic psychic abilities. Those basic psychic abilities are taking your God-given abilities of clairvoyance, clairsentience, empathy, clairalience, clairaudience, i.e. you have a psychic sense that mirrors each one of your physical senses. And then you have a few more, telepathy, that we have been working on, visualization, long distance or remote viewing. We've been working on these in levels 1, 2, and 3 to be able to psychically connect with the world around us, and if we do one-on-one psychic readings, to be able to connect directly with our client, and through telepathy and clairvoyance and clairaudience and empathy and all these other tools, be able to do a base reading on that client. And there are many people who would say, Sandy, it sounds like you're talking down to us when you call these things basic psychic abilities, the base level psychic world, when I've been reading like that for 30 years and it works. So folks, I'm not talking down to any of those psychics who after 30 years are still doing readings on that level. There's nothing wrong with doing readings that way. You're going to be able, through using all those psychic skills, to get a little bit of a look into the future, just a little bit, because you're picking up on all of those things that are going on around the person using your psychic senses and able, using your good intellect, to draw correct conclusions to help to guide them. Nothing wrong with reading on that level. However, there is a natural progression that happens when we develop all of our base level psychic abilities and we start to utilize them. And that can be either through martial arts, interesting, or through doing psychic readings at a bookstore or out of your home or on the telephone, I don't care, over the internet. Psychic readings develop those abilities. Or it can be because you're utilizing those psychic abilities as a counselor in your work. Or perhaps you're utilizing those psychic skills under a microscope through your focus because you're investigating new possibilities of chemical combinations. There are many, many ways that we bring those base psychic abilities into play. No matter what way we're developing and using them, the natural progression for everyone automatically is that there will be something that all of your psychic abilities are saying, wow, I know there's something here, but there's a missing piece. And I know you've all been there. Hands, you have, haven't you? Okay, so your intellect is working full time, your psychic abilities are working full time, you're getting all this input, and there's something not quite coming together. The natural progression at that point is for a channel to shoot up out of the top of your head and for you to connect with your higher self for the answer. It's a natural progression. What I'm telling you is that every single human being ultimately will develop their psychic abilities. Living, just living, will gradually train those abilities. When you take my levels 1, 2, and 3, it speeds up the progression. Every human being, once they've developed those base level psychic abilities, will sooner or later reach the point where they want that one bit of information that's not available. They let go, they relax, they reach up. And that information comes from the higher self through channel. It's a natural progression. You do not need to take a class like this for that to happen. On the other hand, if you are just in the outer world without the virtue of the training of this class, it might take you 3 or 4 lifetimes to get to that point. It's a slower progression. If you study it, it speeds the progression up. So, Keith, you had asked before we began class, you wanted to know more about just what channeling is. Channeling is, at its base form, when instead of reaching out, I reach in, I relax, I wait for the answer from my higher self. It's an internal thing. It's not reaching out to some entity wandering by. It's not reaching out to my friend or my friend's thought. It's reaching within. And when I reach within and I relax and I allow whatever's within me to come through, I automatically begin listening to my higher consciousness, and that information comes through my higher self, and there's the answer clear as day. And when that's happened, you've done your first bit of channeling. Now, in this class today, we are going to learn how to consciously make that happen. Everyone in here has either taken levels 1, 2, and 3 with me, so we know that your psychic abilities are well developed and controlled. Those of you who haven't actually taken those classes with me have either studied the books or the tapes or come to me from another teacher or training on your own, which has brought you to that level. If you're watching this on the Blu-ray video and you aren't at that level, I'm going to tell you right now, you need to go back and study levels 1, 2, and 3, because there will be information that's coming through in this class that's dependent upon your skills from levels 1, 2, and 3. And I'm not teaching them. I'm assuming you have them. Okay? So we pick up from there, we assume all those abilities are yours, they're under your control, and we are now going to learn to utilize those abilities not to connect with the world around us, but to connect with our higher self. And once we've made the connection to our higher self, through our higher self, we can meet and connect with our guides, which is the next level of connectivity. Okay, automatic living life on earth opens your psychic abilities. Training them opens them faster. Automatically, that progresses into an ability to channel information from the higher self. With a class like this, that progression happens faster. Automatically, once you have accessed and are channeling information from your higher self, your next step is through your higher self connecting with your guides. You're still channeling. You'll notice I haven't mentioned trance channeling in there. Okay, trance channeling is something totally different. Trance anything is something totally different. And you will hear me over and over and over and over again ask my students to not trance channel. And I have a reason for that. It's because people who go into trance channel, whether they do it through automatic writing, which we learned in Psychic Development Level 3, or whether they do it in a trance mediumship way, which we're going to start learning tomorrow, or whether they do it trance channeling any entity that's floating around that they think is a guide. That's not them. If you trance channel, it means that you are stepping aside, you're not in your body, and you are allowing something foreign to come in and take charge of your body and move it and speak through it, and you're out here somewhere unaware, asleep. And guess what's happening to your body when you're allowing that to happen? It's sort of like having 250 watts of energy or kilowatts of energy put through a system that's capable of handling 20. What do you think it does to your nervous system? What do you think it does to your brain neurology? I know people who've done that, and most of them don't live long lives. Okay? John would like to make a comment from the back of the room.
I'd also like to add that it's much like you lending your car to other people. Your car is like your body. And if you lend your body out or your car out, people get in your car, they adjust the mirror, they adjust the brakes, the seats, and it is driven differently. So what happens is your energy and the person you lend it to are very different. And two different kinds of energy that operate a body or a car that's solely created by you eventually burns out much more quickly.
Thank you. Very good observation. And that's a really good way to think about it because it correlates to our everyday world and our everyday life. So thank you. I did recently meet someone who does some trance channeling and was very surprised. My guides told me that this guy, I'm not going to mention names, but my guides told me that this particular guy is probably going to live a long life. Highly unusual. And I said, well, why? Why is this trance channeling not going to kill this particular person? And it's because he began it when he was in his teens. He was 12 or 13 years old. Now, I know other teenagers who've dabbled in this field that you are about to explore without protection, without guidance, and literally became possessed by an outside entity and had to have years and years of psychotherapy. So this is not something that I recommend that you say, oh good, if my kid starts now, they're going to be a great trance channel. No, this person was highly unusual. He came to his trance channeling very, very young, probably had done it in another lifetime because it just happened so naturally. And because, you see, his neural network hadn't been set yet, the merge was able to be comfortable enough for him and that outside entity that they were able to go back and forth, come back and forth with one another. He's the only one in over 35 years of being in this field that I have ever met who's like that. And that's why I wanted to share this. Is it possible, folks? Rules are made to be broken. Anything is possible, okay? So if you hear me say something and you say, well, I know somebody who's doing blah, well, maybe they are. But remember, I'm teaching the great mass of people, you folks included, that it's not going to be possible for. So remember, rules are made to be broken, but when I give you a rule, I'm giving you a rule for a really good reason. In 35 years of work, everyone that I know, except for that one person who has done true trance channeling or true trance mediumship, is now dead because their neural network got burned out. And the only one I saw who survived was someone where the blending happened in the teens before the neural network was complete. And he's 1 in a million. So don't try it, okay? And believe me, there are a whole lot of people here who will be tempted. Because you mentioned earlier, and I've already forgotten your name, is it Laura? Okay, thank you. Laura mentioned when we were introducing ourselves before the camera came on that she's getting ready in just a couple of weeks to go and do a session at a New Age bookstore. And that's going to put this person who's new to this field under a lot of pressure, isn't it? Well, folks, it's when we get under pressure that our ego says, oh my, I need all the help I can get. And if some little voice says, well, let me come in and do it for you. Oh, that's so much easier than doing it yourself, isn't it? And you know, a lot of people think that trance channeling or trance mediumship is the way to go. Wow, it's the Cadillac. It is not. It's the easy, cheap, lazy way out. Anybody can turn their power over to somebody else, and then you don't have to do anything. Okay? If you learn it yourself, how much better is that? And you will also live longer. Okay? So, enough on that. You know where I stand on trance channeling and trance mediumship. And Keith, you now know when I talk about trance channeling and trance mediumship, which I won't after this, that I'm talking about somebody who looks like they went to sleep and wakes up a different person. And if you see someone actually do it, their face changes, their voice changes, their movements change. It's really kind of weird to watch, okay? And I do not teach that to my students, and I recommend that my students not get involved with that. If you have a burning desire to go and do that, the only safe way that I know to do that as an adult, or to even really observe it, being done is to join a spiritualist community and become a very stringent member of a spiritualist church where that kind of channeling is always done in and of God in a completely religious and spiritual setting, period, and only in church on Sundays. You get it? Okay, so if there's somebody out there who's saying, you know, I'm like Sandy, only I'm teaching trance mediumship and trance channeling and I'm doing it safely, do not believe them. It's not possible to do it safely, okay? And why do I say if you have to do it within the context of religion? Because there are so many rules and regulations and what ifs and what nots and do it for 10 minutes and this is God talking. Believe me, you are as safe as you can possibly be, and you probably only do it once every 5 years because everybody in church is lined up for a different week. So it probably isn't going to kill you. So if you have an absolute necessity to learn to do it through the spiritualist community. Okay, and only in church. Don't take it home with you. Okay? Enough on that. Back to the natural progression. We have developing your natural psychic abilities. We have progressing to channeling your higher self, progressing to channeling your guides, being tempted into trance channeling and not doing it. And the next progression after that is there you are one day, you're channeling information from your higher self and your guides, and you're doing this wonderful reading. And a voice that's not one of your guides comes through, i.e., your guides have brought someone in because your guides are now acting as the control, or your higher self is, and you hear a voice or you get a feeling of somebody you don't know. and you mentally turn around and you look, and you say, wow, that belongs to my client, it's not mine. That's their dead relative. And what you've done is you've taken your first step into mediumship. It's a natural progression, folks. You've taken your first step into mediumship by channeling someone who came in as a guide for the other person. So now you're not just channeling your own higher self and your guides, you're starting to get the guides from your client, some of whom are people who've died around them who cared enough to stay to give guidance. And if you have a proclivity for spirit communication, AE, mediumship, you'll take that step into connecting with that other person's guide and say, wow, if I could connect with their guide, who's a deceased person, who else do they know that I could connect with? Let's see who else is around them. And then you have taken that natural step into becoming a medium. You see how it's all a natural progression? One leads to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. Every single human being has the capability to be a channel, has the capability to connect with guides, has the capability to connect with someone else's guides, has the capability to be a medium or a spirit communicator. Not everyone will do that. Both John and I have been in the field for 30 plus years. Both of us, obviously, can do every single thing that we've taught. Ron, who helped me to teach levels 1, 2, and 3, and Lisa, who helped me to teach level 3. Robin, who's been at the door helping you guys in and out. We've all worked through all of these things. We can all do all of these things that are being taught. But I would prefer to be a future-oriented channel. Lisa, who helped me to teach level 3, would prefer to be a medium. Does it mean she can't be a channel? Of course not. She channels all the time. Does it mean she can't be a future-oriented tarot reader? Of course not. She reads the tarot. She works with a pendulum. The reason she helped me teach level 3 is because she loves working with crystals and crystal balls, and she's very good at them. But what she likes best is mediumship. You know, it's interesting. What you like best might be where your natural ability is stronger or not. Believe it or not, folks, you know where my greatest natural ability would be? Trance mediumship. Ain't no way I like life too much. Point made? Okay? So just because you have a natural ability for something certainly doesn't mean that you're going to step into it and do it. And what I have found in this field is that every single thing I've touched, I've fallen in love with. I love it all. And why do I personally choose to put my energy in the direction of future-oriented channel? It's because that's my second best ability. I see the future. My guides see the future. Sometimes 30 years out. It gets a little weird. You know, I'm sitting there doing a reading. When I first started reading and my clients were coming to me, walking out the door saying, oh my God, that one is totally whacked out. Weird. And I started taping my readings. And 4 or 5 years after that reading, they'd come back to me with the tape. Do you know how long it took for me to find you? All this stuff is happening. Can you tell me what comes next? Okay? So I had to really work with my guides to pull it in so that those readings only go like 6 months out instead of 5 or 10 years, you know? Without the tape, people would have had this, I think a psychic told me about that once. You know, again, there's a future-oriented gift. So what am I telling you is that everyone in this room has multiple gifts. You just don't have one. You have multiple gifts. Use them all. And use one to support the other. And go back and forth between those gifts. And know that there is a natural progression. It's a natural progression. And you don't have to be in a classroom to have that progression going on in your life. You don't even have to be in the psychic field to have that progression going on in your life. You could be Einstein sitting in a boat channeling his guides and getting E equals mc squared and going, oh my goodness, wow, I'm going to change the world. Wait till I write a book on that. Okay? That's the way it works, folks. When you come into a classroom like this, you speed things up. Now, there's both positive qualities to being in this class and there are negative. Okay? The positive is that you will speed up this progression so that what would normally take 20 years might take 6 months or a year. Incidentally, no matter what you learn in here, unless you physically go out and practice it, it means nothing. Robert and I had a discussion like this, or about this, just a few days ago. If this is meaningful to you, you have to make it part of your life. And I don't care if right now your life is raising 4 children under 6 years old. If this is what you want to do with your life, incorporate it. Incorporate your telepathy, your empathy, your clairvoyance, your clairaudience, your channeling, your mediumship into everything that you do. You do not have to be a professional medium in order to be a medium. Isn't that a shock? You know, I was talking to my grandmother for years before I even gave a thought about teaching mediumship or doing it. It doesn't have to be a professional thing. But there was a big difference between talking to my grandmother and talking to yours. Point made. And I want to learn to turn it on and off. It's a big difference between getting information from my guides, whose language I understand and I've heard since I was a child, versus your guides who give me pictures and feelings that sometimes are really just plain weird. I want to be able to turn that on and off. I don't want to walk down the street and be bombarded by your stuff. It's not mine. So I want to learn not only how to do it, I want to learn how to turn it on and off. I want to learn how to control it. And I want to learn how to protect myself. And I want to learn how to protect my space that I'm working in. And the space that I call home so that it's peaceful and not invaded. Those of you who took P3 with me met Lisa, who's a wonderful medium. You took the mediumship class with her. It was great. Lisa used to mind my house for me when I traveled. One day I came home after traveling and I walked into my home and it felt like there was a party there. Have you folks ever walked into a room that was empty, but the room felt filled with stuff and discordant? Like there was something going on there? Well, that's the way my whole house felt. And I called her up on the phone and I said, Lisa, what did you do to my house? She said, oh, nothing. I was very good. I stayed there. I took care of your dogs. I watched over the house. I took the mail in. I said, and what else did you do? Well, nothing. I said, did you do any readings here? Well, 1 or 2. Were they mediumship? I always do mediumship. Oh, okay. Did you do any psychic parties? Well, I had 2 messages sessions while you were gone, but they weren't at the house. They were in the office. I said, when you finished with the sessions, did you shut down? Did you clear? Did you lock it off before you came back to my house? She said, oops. Think about this. If we're talking about mediumship, in this room there might be 20 people, and each one of you would, when we're doing a mediumship session, your dead people come in because they all want to say hello. Well, how many dead people are behind you in the generations of your family? And how many dead people do you even know about? And how about all of your friends who might have messages to get through? So if there are 20 of you in this room, there are really about 5,000. And they were all in my house. Okay, so I'm going to teach you how to cut that off, how to turn it on and off, how to shut it down, how to protect it so only the nice people come in. And that's tomorrow's session. We're going to learn the basics of that today because it builds. From level 1 all the way up till now, I've been teaching you the protection that is necessary for that particular skill that you've been learning. Today, in learning how to channel, and I don't mean trance channeling, I mean channeling, we're taking a big step. True channeling is not external. And again, these are semantics. I want to be clear that these are my definitions and my terms, because the psychic field, being a very old field which has only recently become accepted enough to even teach a class like this publicly, we have definitions for different words that are extremely variable. So when I talk to you about the limitations or my definition of what it is to be a channel, it doesn't mean that you're not going to encounter another teacher or another person who's working in the field who has an entirely different definition. So please, before you get into an argument with somebody about, oh, well, it means blah, 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 ask them, could you explain to me what you mean when you say this? Because they may mean something entirely different from what I'm telling you, okay? But I'm going to define my definitions so that we are all on the same page, okay? So you know what I'm talking about. So when I talk about trance channeling, I'm talking about you literally leave your body, something comes in, takes it over, and we're not teaching that, and we're not going to talk about that anymore. When I talk about channeling, I'm talking about you relax, you connect to your higher self. Your higher self makes the connection to your guides. Notice I said not someone else's guides, your guides. And your information's coming to you through your higher self and or your guides, period. Channeling, you see, is a closed system. There's nothing in channeling which is going to harm you. As a matter of fact, you can be a channel, and simply because you are channeling, you have higher protection than somebody sitting next to you who's doing regular physical plane, using their psychic readings of telepathy, empathy, etc., and maybe they haven't protected, and man, are they wide open if they're connecting with their empathy and their telepathy and their clairvoyance and their clairaudience to their people around them. They're opening to those people, right? That person actually needs more protection than you do when you're in your closed system of only you channeling information from your guides and your higher self. Doesn't that make sense? So the most important thing when we're channeling, my version of channeling, higher self, your guides, period, closed system. The most important thing when you're doing channeling work is protecting your environment. Because the act of channeling itself is going to protect you. Isn't that interesting? There are many mediums. I'm not going to point out any names, but you know them because you've seen many of them on television, that never took a class like this, that stepped into it through the natural progression and did it safely. And I will tell you that every one of those mediums who stepped into it, did it safely, and is still doing it today, learned to channel their higher self and their guides first, because that's where their natural protection came from. Okay? So not only do you get information by doing it that way, you also automatically set protection in place. Okay? The more you can connect with that higher part of you, and the less you connect with your ego, the stronger your protection is. Now let me take a little step to the side here. How many of you in this room are involved with psychic healing or energy healing? Okay, I thought so. I can feel it in the room. What's so interesting is that very often people who are involved in psychic healing or energetic healing, and here I could be talking about quantum touch, Reiki, there are so many different techniques, hands-on healing. People who are involved with that healing are taught by their teachers that the healing isn't from them, it's coming through them. So interesting. And the inference is it's coming through you from God, right? Well, automatically, as soon as I think of coming through me from a higher positive force known as God, I automatically align my higher self and my guides to help me with that healing. Do you see? So many people who go into the healing part of the psychic profession or psychic field automatically learn channeling, the Sandy kind of channeling. And they learn that channeling because of the way it's being taught. And they also learn to be egoless. Think about that. The healing energy is not coming from you, it's coming through you from a higher source. There's my guides, my higher self, all lined up to do good, coming through me. Where's the ego? There is no ego there. I am the conduit. I have to be present, don't I? I have to be present because I have to be able to feel it. I have to know where to put those hands. There's no trance channeling about this. Okay? So people who have approached this psychic field from the healer's standpoint automatically develop a high degree of protection. It's automatic. It comes from their higher self and their guides and their connection to the God force, whatever they may believe it to be, okay, depending on their tradition. Those same people, the instant they become ego attached to what they're doing, like that, lose the protection. And they need to be aware of that, and ideally the people who are teaching psychic healing need to be aware of that and need to teach that to their people, and they don't. Because you see, if I'm a psychic healer and I'm acting as a channel for these wonderful universal forces to come through me, if my emphasis is on the through me, there's no ego. If the emphasis is on the through me, only me, yeah, I did that. See, you see what I do? Huh? Cool, huh? The instant it turns to that, ego is involved. And I think of ego as being the big ego. I'm going to write this on the board, and I'm going to leave it here for a minute because you guys need to see the difference. There's a big ego, and then there's a little ego. And this big ego, I'm going to drive a happy face here, because the big ego is what we need. The little ego, see that frown, is what we don't need. Matter of fact, it can be pretty nasty. Okay? What's the difference between the big ego, do you think, and the little ego? I knew John couldn't resist this one.
I was giving it to Robin. But the way I see it, little ego is the part of us that compensates for perceived inferiority. Large ego is what we feel confident in working with.
Okay, now, I fully agree. Robin, you had a comment you wanted to make too? That was it. Okay. We have another comment up here. We need to use the mic, otherwise it will not pick up on the camera for the video.
I thought that part of ego was to tell us when to take care of ourselves, to be healthy, to know what was good, what was not good. That's a healthy ego.
That's the big ego. Okay. This is why I'm talking about a lot of people get, especially in this field, when we realize that ego is a big stumbling block. And if your ego gets in the way, I use the healing as an example because we can all see that so clearly. If I put my hands on somebody and I heal their foot and I say, see what I did? That's obviously the little ego, isn't it? Okay, that's about me taking credit for an energy which came through me and allowed that healing to work on that person. Okay, now, where the big ego comes into that is I went to school for that. I learned how to pay close attention to those feelings. I did learn where to put my hands and which technique to use when, and I am very proud that I can do that. And yes, because I did that, I'm going to hang a placard on my door and call myself an energy healer, because I can do all those things. But am I the healer? No. That's the universal force of energy coming through, and that's the person whose body I'm working on receiving that energy and creating a healing in their own body with it, accepting that. You see the two parts? Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, the reason I'm using healing is because it's not what we're teaching in this class. Therefore, I know that your egos are not in the way of your hearing what I'm saying. Okay? Because so often we don't want to hear what's outside of our paradigm. So you see, I want all of you to be very, very proud that you're telepaths. I want you to be proud of your ability to empathically pick up feelings and emotions and know that you're doing it and be able to protect and control what you're receiving. I want you to be proud of what you are capable of doing. You have a right to be proud of that. That's the big ego. The big ego doesn't hide itself. It knows exactly what it's capable of. And the big ego is not afraid to say, oh, I am an amazing telepath. I get information from people all the time. But empathy? You know, it just doesn't work for me. Sorry. You see, my big ego can say that. My little ego has to say, oh, I can do it all. I really can. I'm a telepath, I'm an empath, I'm this, I'm that, whether I can or not. It's your little ego that becomes the charlatan because it's trying to push into places where it is not capable of holding its own. It's your little ego who could stand in front of that group, like Laura's going to do next week, and say, I can read everybody in this room. Guys, help. I'll accept anybody you want. Bring them in. That's the little ego. Is that dangerous? Wow. John?
I'd just like to make a connection. The little ego is very much connected to the solar plexus. The big ego is connected to the heart center and above.
That's very cool. We talked about that last night in our Seeing Beyond the Veil class, that the evolutionary progression of opening the chakras and developing them to their next level on planet Earth right now is moving from the development of the solar plexus to the development of the heart center. Isn't that interesting? So the ability to move our awareness from that little ego to the big ego is a big part of that. Thanks, that was a good observation and ties those two classes together very well. Okay? Incidentally, I do recommend that anyone who is going to be going into doing counseling work with clients, and I know we're not technically counselors. In most states, by law, you cannot call yourself a counselor. However, in our reading work with people, things come up, and we do find ourselves giving advice. So maybe call yourself an advisor if you want. I don't care what you call yourself. But it is very important for any information that you give to someone not to ever be coming from the level of the little ego, but only from the big ego. If it comes from the little ego, it's going to draw on your opinions. It's going to draw on your desire to pass judgment. It's going to draw on your desire to fix it for them when it's not your job. Do you see that? If it's coming from the big ego, your client's going to say, well, I can't do that, and I have this going on, this and blah, blah, and blah, blah, blah. And you're going to say, okay. And they're going to say to you, but don't you, and blah, 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 and I said this, and blah, and you're going to say, okay. Well, if it's okay, why didn't you say it's okay? Well, that's because that's not what I received. And I'm only going to give you the information that I received. So, you can do all those things and that's fine, and you might even be right. But I'm not going to lie, and I'm not going to change what I said. And who knows, I might even be wrong, and that's okay too. You'll find out. This is why you have to think for yourself. That's what you're going to tell your clients. All I'm giving you is what came through. It's up to you to determine if it sounds right, if it looks right, if it plays out in the right direction, to weigh it against all the other information you have and make your own decisions. It's not my job to make your decisions. You see the difference between big ego and little ego? In working with your clients, it's huge. And everybody here has been to psychic readers where you've seen the little ego psychic reader and you've seen the big ego psychic reader. Okay? So you know what I'm talking about. Okay? And here's the problem. If you get into the little ego psychic reader and you start to read that way, you will bring in, especially as you get into the stuff we're going to cover in tomorrow's class, you're going to get into some big trouble. Because when we get into mediumship, remember the first step is through channeling guides, I start to connect to somebody else's guides. And from there to actual mediumship, talking to the dead people, hanging out in the air around somebody, is a very tiny step. If you can do one, the other is right there. And when we get into that area, we're outside of our own protections. We're outside of the closed system, which is us, our higher self, our guides. We're inviting in anything. And if our little ego has control, the part that has to measure up, be the best, be in conflict, be everything everybody else wants us to be, as opposed to what we are, not only are you going to be giving incorrect information to your client, in essence, you have become the Ouija board. Okay? You're also putting yourself and your family at risk. Because you can be bringing into your vibration some very, very negative and sometimes even evil things. Okay? So the first place that protection starts for everyone is to develop the big ego, know who you are, cherish your limitations as much as you cherish your abilities. Do you know, in many of his books, John Edward, one of my former students and present colleagues and friends, in many of his books, he said, the most valuable piece of information I ever gave to him was the right to be wrong. And this is the reason why it was so valuable. If you allow yourself to be wrong, you don't have to measure up to anybody, anywhere, anytime. You can step into your big ego and let the little ego go. That's the key. That's the key, okay? So when somebody that I'm reading says to me, no, Sandy, that can't possibly be, I say, okay, just put it on a back burner. Might happen, might not happen. Just wait and see. But, well, don't worry about it. It's okay. I'm not attached to being right. What a shock. You got it? Okay? Don't be attached to being right. Don't be attached to what's going to come through you. Don't be attached to fixing people. And boy, oh boy, those of you who are psychic healers, have you learned that? The energy comes through you. The person says, wow, what you did for me, can you do this for my friend too? And you say, well, I didn't do it. I was the agent that helped it to happen. I can't give you any guarantees it'll work for your friend. Psychic healing is not like taking an aspirin. It's not like, okay, aspirin gets rid of all headaches. This is not the same. What worked on you might not work on her. We can give it a try, but I can't make any promises. You got it? Okay? There's the difference between big ego and little ego. Please keep that clear. Okay? There's another way that we use, and we use this to keep our ego in check. Every one of you right now, ask yourself, honestly, look inside yourself and ask yourself, why do you want to be a psychic channel? What's your reason? Why do you want to be a channel? Okay? And every single time you step into your channel, when we learn how to do that, ask yourself again, why do I want to be a psychic channel? Because you know the answer is not always going to be the same. Let's take a moment just to go around the room and see what you came up with. Okay? Let's start over here with Kim, right, all the way up in the front. Up here, Robin, all the way up here. Kim, why do you want to be a psychic channel? What answer came to you?
That I've been drawn to this since I can not even remember, like age 4 on.
Coralie, what did you come up with?
To get back to basics from when I was small.
Okay, get in touch with yourself.
To tap into the knowledge of something beyond myself.
Out there or up there?
Beyond myself in the higher self, beyond my physical self.
Okay, so you're still talking within the system of self, but up those levels of...
Yes.
Gotcha.
Thank you for that.
Okay, yep.
Gain a better understanding of myself.
Okay, let's reach back.
To stay on my divine path, to follow the wisdom that it's truly divine, to help me, help other people.
You know, I like that. By the way, it's not that I don't like any of the others either. There's no right or wrong here. This is only you're taking this moment to assess yourself and create a starting point. And each time you re-look inside and you look at your internal compass as to why you want to be a channel, you may find it's grown, it's changed, it's shifted, but this is your starting point. This is merely where you're at right now. And what I liked particularly about what Laura just said was that and I hadn't thought of it myself that way, but by being a channel, notice I didn't say I want to be, but by being a channel, I think of it in the present tense, I do consciously, in every act in my life, take that step back into centeredness. Because in order to maintain a clear channel, you must be centered. So you were right on with your assessment of that, Laura. The two go together. That was kind of cool. Okay, all the way in the back.
This is probably the unpopular answer, but I really don't. But I find that it happens anyway, so I guess more of I'm here more to figure out how to control it, or...
that is not an unpopular answer.
Yeah, because honestly, I have no desire to be a channel. But
Yeah, you have no idea how many people over the years that I have trained, that John and I have trained, who come to us because they are so wide open that their lives are just falling apart, and they need to be able to have a structure to control what their abilities are bringing into their life. And in learning to be a conscious channel, you will be taking a very, very large step towards controlling it all, okay? Or towards being in control through your higher self of it all. Okay, so that was not an unpopular point at all. Very common.
I'm going to be honest and say my little ego was probably the initial start of it, and through the process of doing this, it's I don't know, the awareness and the personal growth from it. So I'm getting, as each session goes on, it's changing all the time, but it is also about what Trish said too for me as well as the control.
Yeah. Excellent.
So there is little ego.
Yeah.
There's a lot of little ego in there.
You know, we talked about this last night, Donna, is that we are at the point where we're moving in the evolution of the planet from the development of the solar plexus center to the development of the heart center. The solar plexus center is the little ego. It's the me, 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 me. It's the lower mind. The heart center is unconditionality. It's love for all. It's universal acceptance. It is the connection to the higher self. Interestingly, when every one of us has an open heart center that's fully developed, not just open, we will be able to create a unity between our lower self and our higher self so that the two parts of us are one. When everyone on the planet has that heart center open, that's what it will be. Nice. So that is a good goal. Okay? And just as a comment, I've learned over the years that every single step I take in the area of psychic development enhances my spiritual growth and my personal evolution. The two go hand in hand as long as you recognize that difference between the big ego and the little ego. Okay? And it's natural for us to go back and forth between the two because at this period on our planet, that's just what the whole energy of the planet is doing, isn't it? Piscean age, little ego. Aquarian age, big ego. And here we are, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, but moving towards the Aquarian age, the big ego and the open and developed heart center. Okay? Ken?
Initially just for answers, but I know that it's something that I'm supposed to do and explore. I don't know why I know that, but I know that that's the case.
Oh, Ken, I'm so glad you said that. When you step into that channel, many of us are only going to use that channel when we do readings, or when we need answers to a math problem, or looking for that one piece to complete the puzzle we're working on. In whatever aspect of our life we have that puzzle. But if you constantly meditate, constantly do your chakra exercise, constantly do the work we're going to do to create and remain in that channel and put yourself into balance and constantly put yourself back into that space, guess what? You get to a point where your higher self, not your little ego, but your higher self through the big ego, which is allowing hearing that higher self information within the closed system, which is you, your higher self, and your guides, you get information nonstop. And you can be living the perfect life where you don't make wrong decisions, and you don't make wrong turns, and you don't have regrets, and you don't mishandle a situation, and you don't fly off the handle because you're emotionally upset over some weird little stupid thing. When you start to really connect with your higher self on a daily, continual basis, that information's nonstop, and you can also get information about your future. And it is the only true way that you can really read for yourself. And you're not really reading for yourself, you're simply knowing for yourself, because you and your higher consciousness almost feel like you're one at that point. So thanks for bringing that up, Ken. That's a really good reason for saying, I want to be a channel.